Good morning. Good morning. Oh, good morning. Oh. Good morning. It is good to see you all this morning. My name is Reverend Ellen Quaadgras. I'm the minister here at South Church in co-leadership with Kirsten Hunter, our director of Lifespan Ministries, and in shared ministry with all of you as we live the value of this faith in small ways and bigger ways all the time. Our UU values, which place love at the center. Love, which can be expressed in so many ways, but one of the simplest is through our attentiveness, through our presence, through our deep listening to ourselves and one another. The power of which is often underestimated and is not only key to our relationships with one another, but may well be essential to the global evolution that is so crucial in our time. Our theme this whole month is the practice of deep listening, and our theme this whole year is to practice our practices, meaning you're invited to take the themes you hear every Sunday and bring them to life in your life. One way to do that is by taking in the opportunities on this special card. Simple prompts around listening to yourself, listening to each other, and to the call of your purpose in the world, or to choose your own adventure because you know what you want to try and we want to support you. How? Of course, by giving you gold stars at coffee hour. So I'll be down there, so will Anna Howard. Just come and find us if you've done some spiritual practice that you deserve a gold star for. And because you're dying to know, here's my crucial coffee hour question for the day. How many lawn inflatables is too many? Is there a limit? Or is one really overkill? Because Halloween decoration should be handmade and involve spider webs and skeletons. Or maybe you need to talk about which trick-or-treat candy is the best one to hand out. I don't know what you want to talk about, but as always, I invite you to use these topics as an excuse to talk to someone you do not know well. You just never know what critical insights you might gain from one another. I'm grateful to be here this morning with Chris Kiper as our worship associate, with Susan Adams and Cathy Okhuysen leading our music, Anita Rozeff offering some words about stewardship, Jen Leiden on tech, Kirsten Hunter offering our time for all ages, after which our youngest among us are invited to go downstairs for some religious exploration. Parents, please accompany them to sign them in if you haven't done that already. We have large print hymnals and listening devices in the back if you would like one. Please silence your cell phone if you have one. And one way we live our values is by naming at the beginning of every service an important truth of history, the displacement of the people who were stewards of this land long before this congregation was here. The Abenaki and Pennacook people tended these lands with care for countless generations. Their wisdom is still with us, and their descendants remain among us today. We acknowledge this truth and offer our gratitude for all those whose care and stewardship of this land and their culture have enriched our living today. And in facing the ancient wrongs we have inherited, may we continue to listen deeply for a greater truth emerging through us as we strive to move from the injustices of the past toward right relationship in the present. We now make time for a few announcements.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kirsten Hunter. It's nice to see you all this morning on this beautiful day as the leaves fall. We have a few announcements, and you can find information about all of them in your order of service, which I encourage you to read because I can't tell you about them all. We just don't have enough time. So I'm just going to highlight a few. One is that this coming Thursday is Halloween, and if you don't know, there is a pretty spectacular parade that happens in downtown Portsmouth on Halloween night, and we have a front row seat right here at South Church, so you are all invited to come to the Halloween social on the front yard. At 6 o'clock it starts. I believe the parade will pass somewhere around 7:20, and our senior youth will be selling baked goods during that time, so you can have some treats and socialize. It's super fun. Please feel free to wear your costumes. Also, our Journey to Membership class is starting in early November. It goes for 3 dates. You come for all 3. If you're newish to the congregation, or if you've been here for a really long time, but you have some commitment issues and it's taken you a while to decide to be a member, but you're curious about what it looks like to become a member of South Church, you can come to this course November 3rd, 10th, and 17th and find out more about it. It doesn't mean you're obligated to join. It's just a great place to learn more about South Church. There is a live auction happening. It's coming up fast. There's a flyer about it in your order of service. Please join us on Saturday, November 16th, beginning at 6:30 for that spectacular event. And donations are being collected right now for what will now be our second annual holiday fair. We host a day where children can come and shop for Christmas for free in early December. So we collect donations of things that kids might want to buy as gifts for their relatives, for their siblings and parents and so forth. If you have things lying around your house that you think would be good for the children's fair, please bring those donations to church sometime over the next month, and they can be included in the holiday fair. And Anita.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to give a really brief update about the annual budget campaign. I want to thank you all who have already pledged. We are filled with gratitude with your generosity, and to date we are at 59% or $363,000, which is amazing. And in terms of participation, we are at 40%. So we are still looking for those who haven't pledged to hop on board and make a donation or make a pledge for this coming year. And I want to invite everybody for a little celebration and a raffle. If you've already put your pledge in, you will be in a raffle for a couple of wonderful items, a 2-night stay in Star Island or a chartered cruise from Portsmouth Harbor Cruises. And I think that's... If we haven't already pledged today before the raffle, can we... Yes, I will. Yes, if you pledge today before we have the raffle, up until the time that we have the raffle, your name will be included in that raffle. So you still have a chance if you haven't done it already. Thank you, Kirsten.
Lie still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing in dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Good morning. As we light our chalice here today, we invite people watching at home to light a candle or chalice of their own. We light this chalice, symbol of our free faith, symbol of the light of love, symbol of love's expression among and between us. May the love at the center of our faith be felt in our listening, in our caring, in our questions, in our wondering, in our presence, and in our attentiveness to one another. Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in reciting the mission statement printed in your order of service. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. My best friend and beloved partner, Kate, and I had spent about half of our lives, actually, in living in Vermont. And most of that time, we'd spent together. In 2017, our kids were ages 10, 6, and 2. We lived in East Montpelier in a 2-bedroom house that needed quite a bit of work. Through the cold winters, we heated our home with a wood pellet stove that creaked and groaned and often broke down. We drove an older SUV that would sometimes just turn off while you were driving it. It wasn't uncommon for our debit card to be declined at the grocery store or gas station. But I had embarked on a new business venture, which is to say, a terrifying new challenge with the distant, unguaranteed potential of stability. Maybe. Life didn't feel easy, but the kids were happy, we were scraping by, and we loved the community, natural beauty, and the values of the place that we were living in. Sometimes in life, you know when you are in metamorphosis. You can feel transition, maybe how boiling water feels right before it becomes vapor. Other times, big changes are only in hindsight, once you reach the other side. I imagine a caterpillar waking from a naturally induced coma, emerging from the cocoon and looking in the mirror. Kate had been mentioning the idea of moving to the ocean for years. She grew up near the water and had an affinity for the salt air, seabirds, and being with the wide openness of the ocean sky. Looking back, I realized that I'd heard her say those words so many times, and I dismissed them. The way you dismiss a friend who always talks about moving to Peru, or writing a book, or learning how to fly a plane. That sounds nice, honey. But moving's expensive. Where would I get a job? I should probably just go vacuum the water out of the basement from the rain. During this time, I was processing my own sense of identity. I was a washed-up musician, a struggling business owner, a father letting his family down. And I was doubling down as a scrappy Vermonter who would dig in and figure things out. But there was a crack in the foundation. I was beginning to question myself. One day in August that year, I came home from work, worn out and tired. Sitting with Kate, she brought up moving to the ocean again. But this time, I was able to not just hear those words, but to listen deeply. And everything became clear. Kate had this beautiful vision for our family. She was able to see beyond the logistical challenges, to feel beyond the sentimental attachment to living in Vermont. She could picture us in a different landscape where we could behold a vast space of possibility. She was manifesting a different life for us. A fog lifted for me, and the future came into view. Kate was witnessing us phase from water to vapor. I was the caterpillar in a dark closet of self-reflection. Once I realized that she was vibrantly energized with an idea that she could not put away, once I got over my own failures and narratives, I could actually listen. And she was so right. After 16 years, we moved to Maine 3 weeks later. Please rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn. With joy, we claim the growing light.
With joy we claim the growing light, advancing thought and widening view, the larger freedom, clearer sight, which from the old unfold the new. With wider view come loftier goal and fuller light, more good to see. With freedom, truer self-control, with knowledge deeper reverence be.
Okay. There may be some people in this room who like to listen to a story from a little closer up, and if there are, you're welcome to come and do that now. There's lots of room on the floor here. I have a story today about not realizing what's happening until it's happened, similar to what Chris was just talking about. And the story I have to share, oh, it's already happening. There's some costumes in the house. I love costumes. The story I have to share is a story about this building and the people who come to this church. It's a story about South Church. Once upon a time, a long time ago, actually almost at the same time that settlers first came to this area, the people that would become South Church also started to come together. Did you know that in the beginning, the people who would become South Church's congregation were also meeting with the people who are North Church? Did you know that? We were all one church in the very beginning, way back in the day. And listening was a part of our story even back then. Because everyone who was a part of that congregation had a faith belief that was rooted in listening and asking questions, even then. And among that group of people, they kind of had some hard times with each other, and eventually they'd sort of made a choice to split, which is hard. Sometimes we make hard choices when we're listening to where we are and where other people are, and sometimes we have to part from one another. And that is a part of our story from way back in the beginning. And South Church split away from North Church. At the time, they were called Congregationalists. But a little while after they split, they made another decision to change because they were listening to themselves and they were listening to the minister who was serving in the church at the time, and they decided to become Unitarians. And that was another moment of shift and change that grew out of listening to their hearts. If you look around this room, you can see signs of some of the beliefs that the people had back then that were Unitarians. These big plaques that are on our wall are related to the theology of most of that community back then. And we still draw wisdom from those messages, but they don't necessarily reflect the whole theology of our community anymore because we did not stop changing here at South Church. We were Unitarians for a while, and in this community there was another church who called themselves Universalists. And those folks had a fire and they lost their church. And when the Universalists lost their church, do you know what the Unitarians in this church did? Anyone have a guess? What do you think?
They invited the other people in.
They did. They invited the Universalists to come to church here with them, the Unitarians. Now, if two different congregations to come together, do you think that you have to do some listening to each other? Yeah, because you probably have some different ideas, and the Unitarians and the Universalists did. They thought a little differently about some things, but they practiced listening. Now, this was before Unitarian Universalism existed. We, as a church, became Unitarian Universalists together about 15 years before Unitarian Universalism became a whole thing. We weren't the only ones that started to notice there was a lot in common between Unitarians and Universalists, and maybe if we joined up together, we could be more effective, and that happened. So around 1961, we became Unitarian Universalists, and we didn't stop changing. We kept listening to our hearts. We kept asking questions about what we believed. We kept saying, does this reflect who we are? Does this idea reflect who we are? Does this action reflect who we are? Is this choice rooted in our values? Does it center love? Those were questions we've always asked and listened for the answer to. And as we became Unitarian Universalists, we decided that there was a lot of wisdom in the world, more than just wisdom from the Bible and from the teachings of Jesus. And we started to pay attention to more wisdom. We started to welcome people into this congregation who didn't even believe in God. We started to welcome people into this congregation who were Buddhist, who were Jewish, who were married between two different faiths. We started to welcome people into this congregation who didn't know what they believed, but they were interested in asking questions. And everyone talked with each other and shared what they figured out and shared what they thought might be true. And they asked questions of each other, and they listened, and they changed, and they listened, and they changed. And even today, we keep doing that. We keep listening and changing as we go. And that is a pretty special thing. I have a question for the kids. Does anyone know what we do downstairs sometimes where we hold up the U's with our hands? Would you be willing to stand with me and show them the hand shapes? Because I can't do it. Everyone who wants to can stand up. When we're downstairs on Sunday mornings sometimes, we do this cool thing where we put up our two U's and we say, we are
Unitarian Universalists. This is a church with open minds. This is a church with loving hearts. This is a church with hands ready to serve.
Amen. We are now going to sing a song to you all if you want to head downstairs for some RE.
During the month of October, our collection will be shared with the Dover Children's Home. The Dover Children's Home provides tools and support for youth to heal from emotional trauma through community-based treatment programs that foster relationship and enable youth to create hope for the future. Learn more at doverchildrenshome.org. Please give as you are able. The offering will now be gratefully received.
this precious day. For all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
I want to begin this time of community care by reminding you that if you need help, if you're struggling, both Kirsten and I are here to talk to, and the pastoral associates are here to help as well. Please just reach out by coming to one of us after the service or filling out a card in your pew. You can put that in the, not in the offering plate. You can hand that to one of us on your way out. Let us gather our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer or meditation. In the quiet of this space, in the quiet of this time, let us slow down. Pause. Listen. Can you hear your heart beat? Or maybe the quiet breathing of your own body. Can you hear or imagine the quiet breathing of the person next to you? Or if you're with us from afar, the quiet breathing of someone you love. In the stillness, let us practice listening. Listening to our hearts. Listening to our bodies. Listening to that quiet voice inside that tells us who we are, what we need, that tells us who other people are and how we can be there for them. In the stillness, we practice listening so that we can listen when it is not so still. The world outside this time and place is often not so still. Can we carry our stillness inside as we witness fires of all kinds, as we witness fears of all kinds, as we witness people not listening to one another, as we witness people not listening to their hearts. May we carry stillness with us. May we bring stillness to wherever we are. May we be kindness. May we be attentiveness. May we be guided by the love inside. And may it grow stronger, moment by moment, as we witness, as we listen, as we hear. the music begins to play, I invite you to hear the sorrows and the joys that are echoing in your heart today. It might be something magical you witnessed yesterday. It might be something troubling that you've been carrying, or something hopeful that's lifting you up. A birthday, an anniversary, a loss, an uncertainty, a reconnection, a fun day with family, or a smile from a friend. This is a time for bringing what's in us into this space so that we can hold it together. So if you like, you're invited to come forward and light a candle for what is on your heart today, or to simply be present to what is in you now. Together we hold all the joys and sorrows for which candles were lit, for which silent prayers were said, or that were simply lifted up in this space here. May we know that our collective presence amplifies what is so beautiful in life, and that our collective care lightens even that which is too heavy for any one person to hold alone. So, what if I said to you that I believe that listening, really listening, deeply listening, could change everything? Could change your relationship with yourself, with your family, with your community. Could even change the dynamics of poverty, of racism, sexism, the dynamics of politics and war, the way we collectively respond to all of it. And what if I said, I think that we humans are standing on the verge of a sea change in our ability to listen, to understand one another, and that the polarization in the world around us is as much an opportunity as it is a symptom and a cry of pain. You don't have to look far to witness cries of pain. Don't really need to say much more. But as I witness the trials around me, around immigration, poverty, racism, war, it helps me to remember sometimes the heat needs to be turned up before we take action, before we even notice. Pain has to surface before we're motivated to address it, and our shrinking world has necessitated greater understanding, inviting us all to confront difference more personally and more regularly than we ever have before. Differences that are prone to divide us. But we have a choice, each of us on every side of every issue. Do we hunker down and cling ever more tightly to what we currently believe, which may be different from our siblings, our uncles, our children? We could escalate in agitation against those who disagree with us. Or what is the other option? Maybe something more open, less solid, that has more to do with thinking and listening and understanding. That latter is kind of a perfect fit for us as we heard our history. Kirsten described it a few moments ago. We are called to a responsible search for truth and meaning. We are the church of the open mind. We say revelation is not sealed. We stand on the side of love. We affirm inherent worth and dignity. We are called to listen deeply, and I think that can make a big difference. Paradoxically, big starts small. Deep starts right here with us. It always starts, I think, to listening to yourself. When we make space for the truth in our own hearts and minds, when we look in the mirror of our truths, we can more fully and authentically make space for the truth of others. And I did hear Chris do something like that when he recognized a little more deeply of what was going on for him and was suddenly able to hear someone he had not been fully able to hear before. But like any truly transformational spiritual practice, listening to self and other is easier said than done. Because this kind of listening requires not only an open mind, but a setting aside. We must see our convictions so that we can suspend them for a time. And particularly when the beliefs of another seem to contradict our own, deep listening requires stepping into a level of uncertainty or disorientation and willingness to be changed that is not necessarily for the faint of heart. Yet, what if doing so could lead to our collective salvation? Philosopher and East German dissident Rudolf Barrow said that when the old forms of a culture are dying, the new culture is created by a few people who are not afraid to be insecure. That's something we don't hear very often. The call to be insecure. And it is a countercultural statement. It's pretty much the opposite that we are encouraged to do from a very young age. In this society, organizational consultant Margaret Wheatley writes, value is placed on sounding assured and confident. People are rewarded for stating opinions as if they're facts. And as life continues to speed up, we don't have time to listen to anyone who expresses a new or different opinion. Often we listen to someone else just long enough to determine whether we agree with them. But, she goes on, we cannot continue on this path if we want to find solutions to the problems that plague us. In this increasingly complex world, it is impossible for any single one of us to know all of what's going on. The only way to see more of the complexity is to ask others for their perspectives and experiences. But if we do that, we will regularly find ourselves inhabiting that uncomfortable place of not knowing, which is hard for most of us. Sometimes our cultural conditioning to act with confidence is so ingrained we don't even always realize we are not listening. As in the following story from a TED Talk by Ernest Ciroli, international aid worker, one of a crew of Italians who decided to teach Zambian people how to grow food. It was 1971, and they arrived there with Italian seeds in southern Zambia in this absolutely magnificent valley going down to the Zambezi River. And they taught the local people how to grow Italian tomatoes and zucchini. Although they found the local people had absolutely no interest in doing that, they paid them to come and work, and sometimes they would show up. And they were amazed, they said, that the local people in such a fertile valley would not have any agriculture. But rather than asking them how come they were not growing anything, he commented, instead they simply said to each other, "Thank God we're here," just in the nick of time to save the Zambian people from starvation. And, as it happened, everything in Africa grew beautifully. We had these magnificent tomatoes, he said. In Italy, a tomato would grow to this size. In Zambia, to this size. And we could not believe it. We were telling the Zambians, look how easy agriculture is. And when the tomatoes were nice and ripe and red, overnight, some 200 hippos came out from the river and they ate everything. And we said to the Zambians, "My God, the hippos!" And the Zambians said, "Yes, that is why we have no agriculture here." "Why didn't you tell us?" "You never asked," they said. And perhaps they realized these particular folks wouldn't have been all that inclined to listen to their answers, even if they had. It takes real intention to counteract cultural conditioning towards certainty and to instead become teachable, particularly when we think we have something to teach. Eventually, Ciroli says he changed his approach. Now he starts with listening. He listens for passion and figures out how to help people do what they want, supports them to take action to meet their needs. How do we practice? What do we do with the cultural certainties, assumptions, attitudes, and habits of mind that get in the way of deep listening? In these times when racism is both so visible and so invisible in the polarization all around us, I was reminded of a conversation I had a few years ago with a Buddhist teacher friend of mine, describing a forum that she led. It was a forum for white people wanting to better understand the lives of people of color, a topic that is both important but difficult because of the defensiveness and guilt and resistance that it can spark. So she began by instructing the audience in Buddhist deep listening practice to watch their minds and notice if they fell into dualistic patterns of thinking that are so much part of our culture. Patterns like, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, that's bad, I like this, I don't like that, etc., and to try to let that go. She also suggested that if members of the audience noticed feelings come up, they take a conscious breath, and then another, until they could calm themselves and simply come back to what it was that they were hearing. The panelists, she said, did a wonderful job of sharing their heartfelt experiences. And when she asked members of the audience after what it was like for them, they were surprised, she said, by the patterns of judging, comparing, and feeling a need to have an opinion they did notice in themselves, patterns which many of them had not even been consciously aware of. But they also said how freeing it was in those moments to choose to let them go and just come back to the present. And when the panelists were asked what it was like for them, they expressed feeling an unusual level of attentiveness in those who were listening and just how satisfying it was to feel so heard. One student said he was usually very self-conscious and careful about saying just the right thing when he spoke in public so as not to accidentally reinforce racial stereotypes, but that he experienced so much love in that audience that he felt safe to share whatever was coming to his heart. He had done speaking engagements many times before, but he had never had an experience quite like that. He later wrote my friend a note saying he hoped she'd do more of these workshops so that he can be in the audience and practice that kind of listening. It reminded me that even when a topic is hard, people can make space even by simply noticing in their own minds what's standing in the way of that space. And that the experience we create can be transformative and inspiring for everyone. When we listen, more is possible. But for the biggest impact, we must take the risk of putting aside, in the words of Margaret Wheatley, even the positions, beliefs, and explanations that define us, that lie at the core of who we are. But when we are willing to loosen our grip on what we think we know, all kinds of room is created for emergence. We have an opportunity many times every day, she said, to be the one who listens to others, curious rather than certain. And the greatest benefit that comes to those who listen is that we develop closer relationships with those who even we thought we could never understand. When we listen with less judgment, we always develop better relationships with each other. It is not our differences that divide us, she said. It is our judgments. Curiosity and good listening can bring us back together. And part of what we may discover, as a colleague of mine once suggested, is that to be listened is a way of being loved, and that listening is a way of being loving. May whatever tensions we see or feel in the world or in us provide us with motivation to hear, to let the love in the center of our hearts help us to listen to ourselves and to one another, so that in small personal ways we build relationship, growth, and understanding in our own spirits. And who knows what impact that has as more of us do this more of the time, everywhere. May it be so. Amen. Let us join together in our closing hymn. It's number 1029, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear.
Love knocks and waits for us to hear, to open and invite. Love longs to quiet every fear and seeks to set things right. Love offers life in spite of foes who threaten and condemn, embracing enemies. Love goes the mile with them. Love comes to heal the broken heart, to ease the troubled mind. Without a word, love bids us start to ask and seek and find. Love knocks and enters at the sound of welcome from within. Love sings and dances all around and feels new life begin.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Before I share our closing words, I invite you to consider during the postlude ways you might practice listening with someone near you as you engage in a conversation about Halloween inflatables or candy, or what helps you to listen in polarizing times, or some other question that occurs to you. Our closing words are adapted from Amaretta Calloway. May we step forth from here in love, a love that empowers us, a love that spills forth from us, a love that recognizes our neighbors and friends sitting near us, in the nameless stranger on the street, in the struggling mother living halfway across the globe. May we feel that love. May we act on it. May we live it in the ways that we can today. Amen.